Hello, good morning and welcome to ET Now's The Newspaper Show with me, Varun. Before we go any further this morning, let me remind you that the newspapers are completely safe. All the rumors revolving around newspapers being unsafe and potential transmitters of the virus is also not true. All the personnel and staff of the Times Group at the presses are using all the necessary safety measures, sanitization measures, and there's really no threat. So if you are interested in getting your paper delivered to your residence, please go to wantmypaper.com where you can explore arrangements for the same. But with that being said, let's get a move on. We have a lot lined up this morning, and the top 10 stories begin with the fact that there's been an import-intensive spending in May. Feel the pinch. So basically, anything import-related in May has really contracted, and that's evident of the fact that there's been very limited flights going in and out of the country. FDs now fetch less than savings accounts. So as the repo rate has been cut, banks are cutting the MCLR rates, and hence, as a result, our deposit rates are also likely to be impacted. India's GDP may shrink 3.2%. That's coming in from WB. Now, there's a whole host of speculation here. Moody's has something else, Fitch has something else. So this is just another rating coming off the block. Now, the FM says that 3 lakh crore credit for all companies and not just MSMEs. Now, this is a major development. We know the 3 lakh crore scheme was there for MSMEs, but there's a lot of larger corporates as well which need money. So it seems that the government is now going to be coming to their aid as well. The government may allow import of untested drugs. So as the virus really continues to take a toll, here in India and Maharashtra specifically, we're seeing a surge day on day. They're willing to go out on a limb and try some medication which might not have gone through all the proper testing, as long as it's generating some good results. Now, the FY21 bank credit growth may fall to 0 to 1% CRISIL. So based on the way Indian banks have been growing, this is not really a surprising figure. SBI's most recent quarterly growth came in at 5.7%, which is much less than what it usually is. So this is something to keep an eye out for. RBI plans changes to securitisation norms. So we'll be bringing you more on this story later, but basically there's going to be a change in some of the norms regarding security. Bharat Bond ETF to launch NFO issue to raise 14,000 crore. So that's quite an interesting figure as well. Malls display summer collection PPEs and masks. So this is something that's now going to be retailing in your malls. You're going to be able to find more and more stores creep up where people will be wearing these themselves, and then they'll also be for sale. And finally, LG overrules Kejriwal, hospitals to treat all. So that's a really good move coming in. Doesn't matter which disease you have, as long as you're sick in Delhi, you can get to a hospital and get treated. This is something that was causing quite a stir. Now, let's take it forward from the top 10 to your market and corporate stories. The market stories are revolving around the banks mainly today. SBI slashing their key lending rates. So they are the first to transmit, and being the largest PSU in the country, they support the government a lot. So whenever the repo rate gets cut, I must say I usually always see SBI first be the bank to immediately cut its MCLR rate. That is the lend at which we are able to borrow money from the bank, for those of you that don't know. SIP flows down for second month, but above 8,000 crore. So after the whole Franklin fiasco, plus the fact that people have not been getting paid for 3 months, SIP flows were expected to dry up considerably. That doesn't seem to be the case. While they have moderated, still well above 8,000 crores. So that's not more than a 10 to 20% divergence from the previous figure. So people anticipated a lot worse, and that's quite a decent number. Now, Indocent promoters to hike stake, that's something we spoke about yesterday. They sent a notice to the exchange. They own 14.68%, and they want to take this up to 15% right now. And then if the RBI allows further purchase, they might even be exploring that. The stock was up nearly 10% at one point yesterday and closed the day also fairly strong, up around 6%. Then you have PFC in talks for 715 million overseas bond issue. Now, if you remember, PFC is the company, REC and PFC, that are supposed to lend money out to power companies so that they can pay their suppliers down the line, right? And PFC is going to need to come up with these funds, so they're exploring a bond issue to raise this money. Finally, the third case against Franklin for shutting schemes. So the Franklin fiasco, everyone knows about it. We spoke about it so much. There's now some legal matters that are going on surrounding the closure of certain schemes from certain clients. Okay, we're now done with the market. Let's get you a quick update of the corporate before we get to our individual stories. Now, the corporates are basically coming out with the fact that India Inc. faces a big shortage of workers. So, despite everything we're hearing of migrant workers returning from the villages, etc., there still seems to be a shortage of workers. Pandemic leaves hiring plans in disarray. So this is again something fairly obvious. Most of your companies which you work in will be seeing that certain employees are getting pay cuts. So when the existing workforce is getting pay cuts, I doubt anyone's getting hired. And that's basically what it says, that until this COVID pandemic is lifted, don't expect new jobs to come up in a hurry and don't expect firms to hire in a hurry. They're focusing on controlling the cost right now. Changan to delay India entry by a year. So that's quite self-explanatory. Please do have a look at the paper for that. Telcos seek tax relief on unpaid bills. So the telcos are always seeking something, either reprieve on AGR, they're looking out for funding, they want the tariff hikes. Now it seems that they want some tax relief on unpaid bills. So we'll see what the government has to say about that. And then small hotels may stay shut for a while. So this is again self-explanatory. I doubt any of us are going to be going to a hotel to stay there very soon, anytime very soon, unless we have to go for work. So as a result of this, a lot of the smaller players in the industry are going to remain shut for a while. So with that, now I've got you through the headlines for this morning, essentially. One story that I'd like to bring to your attention is about the import intensive. Now, the government is likely to impose curbs on import-intensive capital spending by ministries and departments, among further measures to divert resources to where they are needed and keep unnecessary expenditure in check in FY21 as it deals with the fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. So basically, this is again quite self-explanatory. Capital allocation right now, our fiscal deficit's going up, we're borrowing money. So the money needs to be spent smartly and efficiently where it's really required, and now there's going to be more and more scrutiny from the government as to where exactly these funds are allocated. Alright, let's now bring on board Pankaj, who's with us, and he tracks the pharma space really closely, and it seems that the centre has proposed to ease some rules allowing the import of any new untested drug. Good morning, Pankaj. Welcome to the show. What does this mean for the industry? Which players will be impacted? And is it a good or a bad development?
Well, Varun, it's very difficult to say, how this development would actually work. But what we are picking up is that rules will be eased to allow such medicines that can have usage for COVID. Now, remember that we are struggling with the situation, which is very unprecedented. And that's why Centre has proposed to ease down the rules to allow import of any new untested drugs undergoing clinical trials in other countries for a composite use. Now, this is only used for COVID. This is an unprecedented, rare pandemic that one is seeing, leading to a lot of disruption, and that's the reason, why this may be proposed. Remember that, even, IPCA's HCQ, which is actually banned into US because of the facility issues that they have got an approval overnight coming in from the US market. Some of the drugs where, initial signs are looking decent are also, getting approved by US FDA for, initial treatment. So all these things are happening worldwide, and, that's why probably this is something which said that, could be needed because a lot of people are struggling day in and day out, and maybe if some medicine can help them, that's something that one would look for. And maybe because it's an unprecedented situation, you're seeing this kind of step coming in.
Right, Pankaj. Thanks for joining us. I really agree with you. At some point you have to take a call. If people need help, you might have to forego on the testing. So I see the point you're making. And thanks again for joining us this morning. But let's get a move on. India Inc. Companies across the industries are facing a shortage of blue-collared workers. So these are the kind of workers that a Quest, a Team Lease, an SIS would be employing as they gradually resume operations. What will India Inc.'s modus operandi be as the migrant crisis starts to cause a stir? So, it's quite a simple thing. We have a huge workforce in our country which does blue-collar work, and a lot of these workers have left, gone back to their villages, gone back to their families during this unprecedented time because they don't know any better and they just don't have the support system in the city. So now all our factories and retail shops, everything is opening up and we don't have a workforce. So this is going to be a problem. And we hear all the government officials talking about how to bring migrants back to the urban areas, and it's something that's definitely going to remain in focus. The AMFI data was also out yesterday, and like we spoke about earlier, while flows have moderated slightly, they're still fairly impressive. But my colleague Jayesh, who's the expert on this matter and tracks the data quite closely, is now with us. Good morning, Jayesh. Welcome to the show. In your view, how is the AMFI data and what are the key takeaways?
AMFI reported its monthly numbers for May, and there was a total inflow of more than 70,000 crores that we got for the month. That was largely led by the liquid category. However, closer look at the equity inflow suggests that there was a second month of decline for the equity inflow, which came in at just about 5250 crores. The total AUM also improved on a month-on-month basis to 24.5 lakh crores, while the equity AUM also showed marginal uptick at about 6.3 lakh crores. The SIP book also, that also showed a dip towards 8,123 crores, but still, maintained above that 8,000 crore mark. Now, like I was telling you, this is the second straight month of decline that we have seen for the equity inflow. However, interestingly, what we saw was that the large and mid-cap category saw an inflow which was more than 100% on a month-on-month basis. However, individual categories, the multi-cap category, large cap and the mid-cap category slowed down, and that was about 30 to 40% slowdown on a month-on-month basis that we saw, and also the second straight month of decline for all of these three categories. But like I was telling you, the SIP book that still maintains above 8,000 crores. Overall, decent numbers from AMFI, given that we're just coming out of the lockdown.
All right. Thanks for that, Jayesh. And it's quite positive to see the way the mutual fund data is really coming in despite all the problems we're seeing in the economy. Now, coming back to the COVID impact and its impact on corporates, the finance minister, like we told you earlier, said that there's going to be money made available not just to MSMEs but all corporates. So Nirmala Sitharaman, the Honourable Finance Minister, according to an ET report, has assured the India Inc. that support will be extended for them amid this COVID battle, and it just won't be restricted to the MSMEs. So 3 lakh crore of COVID credit will now be deployed for all companies. So it doesn't matter where you stand, how big you are, what your turnover is, what your current debt levels are, which tax bracket you're in, you're going to be able to avail an extension in working capital from your bank, and the government is going to try and work with the banks on how to get this done. The question will just be, how quickly will the banks be able to on-lend, which is what it always boils down to. Even in the case of the MSMEs, the banks are the ones who have to take the risk. So key story to look out for, and we'll be updating you on that as we go forward. Now coming to the power sector, like we also spoke about earlier, PFC needs to raise money. $750 million is what they're looking to raise, so that takes it to about 5,000 crore. This is through an overseas bond issue, so you're looking for foreign investors, not domestic. And the timing for this has not been made clear yet. But what we do know from the stimulus package is that the 70,000 crore, which is supposed to go to the discoms and the generation cores, is supposed to come from REC and PFC. So they'll have to raise that money from somewhere. So keep an eye out for this one, and this is a listed stock, so you should see the counter also reacting today in some form. Now we're going to also shift gears a little bit from power to hospitals. And as the COVID-19 load goes up across the city and across the country, there's major shortages coming to light. We don't have enough beds in our hospitals, and they're already full to the brim. So home care is coming up as the next best solution. And hence, in this fight against COVID, private hospitals are looking at home care plans that are sustainable and fruitful for mild COVID patients. So, if you're not having extremely horrible symptoms and with medication and rest, you can overcome the virus from home without having to go into a hospital. The private hospitals are going to come out with some products and some advisory services which will help you deal with the situation. So this was on page 5 of the Economic Times. If you're interested in exactly what these measures are, do have a read. Okay, now coming back to the power sector, but from a different side, the green energy. Adani Green Energy has bagged the world's largest solar bid, entailing the building of a photovoltaic power plant of 8,000 megawatts. So that's huge. This is also going to include the installation of a domestic solar panel manufacturing capacity of 2,000 megawatts. So a total investment is totally going to come to something like $6 billion. It's a massive deal. But Vivek, who is really tracks the power sector closely, and Adani Green as well, is going to join in with what this deal means and what the significance of it really is. Good morning, Vivek. Welcome to the show. Take it away.
Well, the stock in focus and the company in focus today is the renewable energy arm of the Adani Group, which is Adani Green Energy. Now, remember, mainly this particular company is in the business of actually making renewable power, and mainly they use the solar energy. Now, what actually has happened overnight is that Adani Green Energy has won the world's largest solar bid worth almost $6 billion US. Now, remember, Adani Green Energy has a JV with multinational giant, that is Total, and the company has a clear stated ambition of becoming the world's largest solar power generator. So overnight, what has happened is that the company is going to set up now a solar power plant of almost 8,000 megawatts, and is also going to set up a domestic solar panel envisaging capacity of almost 2,000 megawatt. Now, this again is roughly a total estimated investment of close to $6 billion, and this particular order has been won under the Renewable Energy Agency, SECI, which was formerly known as the Solar Energy Corporation of India. This is a very important and a significant development, clearly showing the push that the government is giving towards the solar energy as well as the renewable energy component and the generation of renewable energy in India.
All right. Thanks for that, Vivek. Very interesting move from Adani, and we'll be looking out at how the counter responds today on that. Thank you. Let's switch it up a little bit now to the IT sector. It seems that these mid-tier tech companies are starting to see a lot of M&A activity and deal action again. There's been a lot of new deals signed in April and May, and this is really a converse to what we were seeing in Feb and March, where there were almost no deals. So obviously the situation seems to be improving, and my colleague Poonam, who's been looking at these developments quite closely, is now with us. Good morning, Poonam. Take it away.
Well, mid-tier IT firms are certainly seeing a bounce back in terms of the deals after a slowdown that was seen on account of COVID. There is high demand coming in from communications, media, technology, financial services, consumer goods sectors as IT firms increasingly adopt cloud workspace, automation and cybersecurity. In fact, some of the deals have come back in the month of April and May post the slowdown that we did see on account of the lockdown. Zensa Technologies, for instance, had seen a pipeline of just around $600 million in the month of March, but they've seen deals worth $1 billion in the month of May. They're also stating that about 70% of these deals are coming from the digital space. Mindtree, which is Bangalore based, has seen large deal ramp up, and they state that there is high demand from communications, media technology, financial services and consumer goods sector as per Mindtree. L&T Technology Services has seen deals just under $50 million from automotive and media clients, and similarly Persistent Systems has signed a deal with a software client. KPIT has signed a deal at over $50 million from European automaker on an electrification project. So yes, some of these mid-tier IT firms are seeing deals come back. Revenue, of course, is likely to see a hit in the near term, but these are clearly signs of recovery.
All right, thanks for that, Poonam. It's great to see some fervor coming back into those IT tech mid-tier companies. But let's switch gears a little bit to the medical sphere and what's happening in Delhi. The Chief Minister, Arvind Kejriwal, he had a controversial decision where he wasn't going to let people who weren't residents of Delhi use the hospitals. So it didn't really matter how sick you were, but if you had COVID-19 concerns, there was going to be a check if you were a resident of Delhi, and only then would you receive treatment. So a lot of people obviously stood up against this, and Delhi, I'm sure, has a lot of residents who aren't particularly residents of the Delhi state. So it was raising some concerns, and now this decision has been overruled by LG, and it says that you cannot have any, classification norms. You can't deny anybody treatment based on the fact that they might not be a resident. If they show up at your hospital and they can afford the treatment or they have the right paperwork, you have to treat them. So this is a major positive thing coming in, and it was a bit ridiculous that such a thing was even being considered. Switching gears a little bit yet again, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, according to this ET report, has described the talks with China to resolve the border situation as positive. He's also said that under no circumstances will India's honour and pride be compromised. So this is on page 3 of the Economic Times. Do have a read if it seems interesting to you. We're now done with the Economic Times stories, and we're going to be taking you across to the Times of India and discuss the top 5 stories there. And these have a bit more of a COVID element to it. So here, the first thing is that Mumbai has now crossed 50,000 cases. So, almost 1/4 of the country's cases are here. Fresh cases in India fall below 10,000 for the first day. So that's amazing. We've just been on an upward trajectory. Today seems to be a slight reversal on that trend. Nearly 1/4 of Maharashtra cases have been in June. So that's another really interesting figure, because we've only had 9 days in June. And in 9 days, you've already had 1/4 of the total cases of the state. So June seems to be the worst month, and ironically, this is when we are starting to open up. Delhi CM is sick. He's supposed to go for a COVID test. So that's quite self-explanatory. And the city go to test sepsis drug for COVID. So another drug that's going to be tested for COVID efficiency and impact. So that's quite a key development. We're now going to get you an exclusive excerpt of a conversation with my colleague Tamanna Namdar had last night with Rajiv Bajaj of Bajaj Auto. So much to discuss, so much happening in those families' businesses. Let's listen in.
People seem to think I'm a critic of the government. I'm not a political animal. I'm not a critic of the government or of anybody in government. But yes, if there is a policy or the other, which in my view is inimical to my industry or my business or my employees, then I think it's my responsibility to speak about it, and that's all I do. So let's move on to Unlock 1. And I think currently the process of unlocking is a little stop and start, a little erratic, a little haphazard. It gets better with every day. But even now, the fundamental issue is this, to my mind, that the lesser problem around us is the flu virus. The bigger problem around us is the fear virus.
I must come to the political point, because for some reason, that's what everyone talks about. How come, this industrialist is coming out and speaking? And I remember a comment you made just about a month ago when you were unhappy with the way the Maharashtra government was opening up the lockdown and allowing plants to function. So I know that you're critical of government policy. But have you found yourself bracketed in this, two camp sort of war because you've been speaking out? What has been the outcome of this?
No, never. In fact, I say to whoever feels concerned or anxious about me that, look, I am not here to talk about a political subject. I don't talk about India and Pakistan. I don't talk about Hindu and Muslim. I don't talk about CA and NRC, because that is not my circus. But when my business is affected, when I am expected to continue to employ and pay my people, when my dealers and suppliers are affected, then I think it is my circus. These are my monkeys, and I need to speak up on their behalf.
Do you think that there is an unreasonable sort of hesitation when your peers don't speak out? I mean, Indian industry is notorious for being very politically correct and saying even lesser than they perhaps should.
Well, I guess it's a case of to each his own, I mean, some people are comfortable speaking up and some people are not. And I think they are both right. One should do what one is comfortable doing. People, on the other hand, also speak up on a lot of other issues, a lot of other, let's say, political issues. And I don't care to speak up on that. And I don't think I owe anybody an explanation for that. But I will say this, that when people in business, when people in entertainment, when people in sport, when other people, prominent people in other walks of life can say so much about a poor elephant that died, surely they can say a few things about millions of people who walked home.
Well, that was a really interesting conversation, and I'm sure we'll be bringing you more of that later on in the day. But with that, we're completely out of time here on the Newspaper Show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned to ET Now.